In this video, we will cover how to establish a connection to your Firestore environment and how to both read and write data into Firestore easily. We can first create a new Firestore Connection Manager by right-clicking in the Connection Managers window and selecting New Connection. From the list, we can select Firestore to add our new connection into the package. The first page, General, would have the general connection details needed to set up the connection. You would need to enter your project ID. This would be the unique identifier for your Firestore project. Next, under the authentication mode, we can select from one of the available modes. The first option is authorization code, which involves working with an existing token if one was already created, or generating a new token using the Generate Token File button. For an existing token, you would be able to select the token file path using the ellipsis. Note that this field supports both a file system path or a shared access signature URL for blob storage and Azure files. Once we reach the OAuth configuration and sign-in window, we would first need to select the app type. By default, this is set to My Own App, but the KingswaySoft app can also be used for quick testing. For My Own App, you would be gathering the details from your own app to allow you to log into the service endpoint and authorize your app. The client ID, client secret, and redirect URL you may retrieve from your app. We provide a scope by default, but this is an editable field that can be adjusted. PKCE may be enabled if your app is a proof key for code exchange app type. If you enable the option Use Default Browser to sign in, this will open the default browser on your machine. When unchecked, the authentication process will be completed inside the toolkit. The benefit of working within our toolkit is the redirect URL will be automatically pasted after authorization. Once we are ready to proceed, Sign in and Authorize can be selected. When the token is created, we will need to provide a name and location to store it, as well as set a password. Back in the General page, you will see the token file details from your newly created token. The second authentication mode is the service account for server-to-server authentications. In this mode, there are two key file types we can select. The key file can be JSON or P12 file. Similar to the token, the path where the token is located can be provided, and both file path and shared access signature URL for blob storage or Azure files is supported. The service account and client ID would be populated when the file is chosen. If the P12 key file is selected, you would need to provide the service account. The location of the certificate by default is set to store, which we recommend. The certificate thumbprint can be entered manually or selected using the ellipsis within the certificate chooser, and the password associated to the certificate would be provided. If you select JSON, this would be similar as you would provide the path to your JSON key file. Both file system path and Azure Blob Storage Shared Access Signature SAS URL are supported. In the second page, Advanced Settings, we can enter proxy and miscellaneous settings. The proxy server settings by default are set to No Proxy, but you may manually enter the proxy server address and username and password as required, or auto-detect if working with a system-configured proxy. The timeout in seconds can be provided to specify how long to wait before a connection timeout occurs. By default, this is set to 2 minutes. A value of 0 would indicate no timeout. API throttling allows you to restrict how many requests you want to send to the Firestore service per unit of time. A throttling rate can be set that corresponds to how many requests per second, minute, or hour. The last option, Retry on intermittent errors when enabled, will help recover from possible intermittent disruptions of service. This is helpful as it can prevent the integration process from stopping due to certain types of service-related issues. The service call would be retried up to 3 times in determined intervals. When we have configured our connection manager, the Test Connection button can be used to see if a successful connection has been made to the service. Pressing OK saves our current configuration and closes the Connection Manager window. After the Connection Manager has been created, we can use it within our Firestore Source Component to read data from our Firestore environment. In the SSIS toolbox, we can drag and drop this into our data flow window. Then double-click to open the editor. In the General page, the first thing we need to do is select our existing Firestore Connection Manager. If one has not been created yet, you can create a new connection directly from within the component by clicking New. After selecting the connection, we can define how we would like to retrieve data from Firestore. We begin by selecting the database from the drop-down. To the right, the refresh icon can be clicked to refresh the database selection. This is available for both database and collection, and is helpful if changes have been made and you want to reflect the current state. After that, you may choose the collection you want to work with in the drop-down as well. When the collection is selected, there will be an optional prompt if we want to import documents from Firestore. If we select Yes, this will take us to the Firestore document importer. You would be able to select the database and collection. Note, this would be currently set to your chosen database and collection within the General page, but can be changed. The Documents to Scan option allows you to specify the maximum number of documents to retrieve that will be used to set the design. This may be changed to 0 in order to read all. Lastly, similar to the Structured Query section back in the General page, you may provide a query in order to filter the data that needs to get retrieved. When ready, we can import, and our design will get changed based on our settings. Output as raw text can be enabled if you want to output the data as a single column as a raw text format. This way, each row of data will be contained to one column. Document Designer would not be available when this option is selected, as it is not required. The Advanced Settings option can quickly take you to the Advanced page if required. We can cover the options available in the Advanced page later in the video. The Structured Query window allows you to provide a query to filter the data you want retrieved. Dynamic values are supported within the query, as a variable may be inserted using the Insert Variables option. There are some additional tools that allow you to cut a highlighted portion of query, copy, and paste. Also, there is an undo and redo option when creating the query. Lastly, you may use the Find text box to search for the entered text within your query. Visible for all pages, the FX icon allows you to dynamically set expressions for available properties in the component. The documentation icon can be used to generate metadata information on how the component is currently configured in terms of the columns available and their data types. If we move to the Document Designer page, this allows us to import and export design structures and adjust the generated nodes along with their settings. Since we previously imported our design, the layout is pre-populated, but other import methods are also supported. The import option can be used to import the design, and the available options are to import from a Firestore document. This will open the Firestore document importer we have seen before. A local JSON file or JSON schema file can be used when importing, or a designer settings file if previously exported using our export option. Your current designer settings configuration can be exported to a designer settings file, preserving structure and configuration. At the top of the page, there are options to add a new node, placed in the hierarchy at the cursor's location. Selected nodes can be removed along with all nested nodes. Node name, node type, and output data type can all be changed as needed. Nodes can also be moved within the hierarchy. The Rename Nodes dropdown can be selected to set the full qualified node name based on the node location in the document, or the short name to set as the given node name directly. The Filter Columns section includes a Show All Columns option, which can be set to true if the node is repeated. Otherwise, it defaults to false. If an object requires a separate output path, its output type can be changed to output. The different outputs are highlighted in green, and we can also show the effect this has in the columns page. The node type can be changed. Raw, in this case, would store the node's value as a single line of text. The output type can be adjusted to set the type of output for a node. For object and array, this can be either an output or none, while value and raw only allow for column. The output settings for an object can be used to specify the data type for a value node, or provide a link between child and parent output on object and array types. We can switch over to the Additional Settings tab, which provides some additional setting that can be applied. We can specify the encoding we want to work with using the dropdown. If there is a null, we can set how we would like to handle this in the null mode property. The isRepeated text qualifier can be set to one of the available characters or none. This is helpful when the isRepeated column is set to true for one or more nodes. The isRepeated text delimiter also has a drop-down where a specific character may be chosen. This is also helpful when the isRepeated column has been set to true for one or more nodes. The last option under this section can be enabled if node names are case-insensitive. By default, this is disabled. Over in the third page columns, this section displays all available columns from the document designer. We can choose which output to view and select or deselect any columns we would like to ignore. The two filtering options, Hide Unselected and Hide Selected, help narrow the column list. All columns can be selected or cleared quickly using the top left button, and the search box makes it easier to locate specific columns. To search for a column name quickly, you may enter it into the field. This will filter based on the string provided. The final page is the advanced page, and here you may adjust from the available options. Page size would determine the maximum number of rows for a single page. By default, this is set to 0, which would indicate the entire request will be sent without pagination. The second option, Max Document Count, would determine the max number of documents returned. And by default, this value is set to 0 for all documents to be returned. When we are finished with our configuration, click OK to save. Finally, the source component exposes output paths that depend on the configuration. Dragging a destination component onto the dataflow window allows us to view and map the available outputs in the input-output selection. To write to your Firestore instance, you would be able to work with our Firestore Destination Component. In the flow, we have already included an example data source, so now we can drag and drop our component to connect the inputs to the destination. For the general configuration, we can work within the first page. The same connection manager may be selected if you have an existing one. Otherwise, a new connection can be created. Next, from the drop-down, we can select the database we want to work with. You may refresh the database or the collection with the refresh icon on the right side. When a database is chosen, the collection drop-down will be populated based on that database. A prompt will occur if we want to import documents. This is helpful for generating the structure in the Document Designer page based on the documents we have filtered for. This opens the Firestore Document Importer window, where we can select how many documents to scan to build the design, or set the value to 0 to read all items. The query window allows filtering on fields if a subset of documents has the desired structure. To map the fields, we can skip ahead to the columns page briefly for now. The Map Unmapped Fields options can be used to map input columns to Firestore fields if the names match. Fields can also be manually mapped using the drop-down. You may have noticed there is a drop-down to change the input, and each input option would have its own set of columns. Back in the General page, Action lets us select which action to perform. We can create new records with the Create option, update existing records, upsert to first attempt an update on an existing record if a match can be found, otherwise create the record instead. Lastly, Delete can be used to delete existing records. When Replace, Document Fields is selected on available actions. This will overwrite document fields rather than merging or appending. The next option, Input as Raw Text, is available for all actions except Delete, and this will write the entire record in the raw format as a single column. The Document Designer page would not be available if we enable Input as Raw Text, as it's not required. The Batch Write option is available for all actions except Create, and this will group the request to include the number of rows specified in the batch size as part of each request. The benefit of setting Batch Write is the reduction of calls to the service. The Batch Write label can be provided and is helpful when you want to label a set of operations for monitoring or auditing. At the bottom of the page, there are options available for all pages of the component. The Map Unmapped Fields, as we saw before, can be used to map the fields that match based on an exact match. If you would like to clear the current mappings, the Clear All mappings can be selected. The FX icon can be used to dynamically set the available properties for your component using an expression. The last option, Generate Documentation, can be used to save and preview the current metadata of your configured component for both the inputs and outputs. In the Document Designer page, we can see the design that was imported previously. At the top of the page, you would be able to manipulate the design by adding nodes under the same hierarchy that is currently selected, or a node and its children may also be deleted with the Remove Node option. The node's position can be moved with the direction buttons. Rename nodes will allow you to specify how the node name should be represented. Full qualified node names based on the node location in the document, or use short names to use the given node name. The Filter Columns section includes a Show All Columns option, and 2 additional columns are made available, Is Repeated and Format String. The filter nodes can be used to quickly find a specific node based on the name. In the design, the node type can be changed. The available options are Array, Object, Value, and Raw. The raw node type can be used to write JSON data exactly as it is in the document, rather than just the value. The node name and input column name are both editable. The node name will be the name of the node in the document, while the input column name is the name to be used for the node when writing to the document. Is Repeated can be used to specify if the node is repeated within the document. The Format String option allows you to specify the output format for a string when a conversion from a datetime or numeric to a string type is performed. Depending on the node type, different source types can be made available for the current node. Object and Array will have either input or none as an option. Value and Raw can either be a column, static value, or a variable. With the node write settings, you can view and change the data type of a value or raw node by double-clicking or the relationship editor. This can also be opened for a child array to adjust or establish a relationship. In the bottom right, there are also additional ways to import or re-import our design if required. With the first option, Designer Settings, you can import a settings file previously exported by our component. This will populate the views and configure the additional settings. With the Inputs option, you may reset the design based on your upstream inputs. Document Firestore is the same option when we saw the importer previously, and the design will be generated based on the structure of the items that are scanned. The last 2 options, you may choose a local JSON file or JSON schema file on your local machine. Export Designer Settings lets you save the designer settings to preserve the design and Document Designer additional settings configuration. In the next tab, the design can be seen in a diagram view. The input can be edited to add, remove, or make data type changes to any node. A new input can also be created or deleted here. The next tab preview lets you see a sample of the document filled with test values. In the Additional Settings tab, you may choose the encoding from the drop-down menu. Link IDs are scrambled option when enabled is helpful when there are multiple inputs available when writing. You would be specifying if the IDs are scrambled between the inputs and you expect them to come in a random order. Internally, the component will perform an in-memory match and join. With the repeated text qualifier, you may specify which qualifier to use when the isRepeated property is set to true. The isRepeated text delimiter is similar in that you may specify the text delimiter used in a document when an isRepeated property is set to true for one or more nodes. In the next page, Columns at the top, we can select the input we want to work with, as we saw before. For filtering, you may hide fields that have been mapped or hide fields that are not currently mapped. The filter box lets you find a column by its name easily. An input column can be manually mapped or set to ignore to exclude it from the mapping. The data type column would indicate the data type that was set in the document designer. The last page, Error Handling, is used to help you specify how errors should be handled when they occur, as well as additional output columns that can be enabled. By default, this will be set to fail the execution when an error occurs. Ignore errors can be set to skip the error and continue the operation. Redirect rows to error output can be selected to redirect just the rows that have received an error and have them flow in a new error output path for inspection and further processing or logging. There are some additional columns available in the default output that have been returned in the response. We can show these additional columns after we save our component's configuration. The first path we connect is the default path, where successfully written rows flow through. If we double-click on the path and go to the metadata, the new columns are made available. Same for the error output path. If we connect this, we would be able to see the rows that have failed here, as well as their row data. There are 3 additional columns here: error code, error column, and error message, available for troubleshooting or logging. There is an additional error output path where orphaned children rows that have errored would flow. We hope this video has been helpful in your understanding and working with our Firestore Connection Manager, Source, and Destination components. Give this a try in your integrations. KingswaySoft, data integration made easy.